Hello everybody, I wanted to do a video on practical reasons to own gas masks, not as a collector like I am, but if you actually needed a gas mask in an emergency. So what I want to do in this video is look at several reasons you might need a mask and how much you really need to pay for one. On the subject of gas masks, there's a lot of misinformation out there, because the problem is, if you're a company that sells gas masks and you sell expensive gas masks, you want to tell everybody that cheap masks won't work and won't protect you, which isn't necessarily true, but we'll get into that. So what I have here is an old Czech gas mask bag, but in the bag I don't actually have an old Czech gas mask. I have a Forsida F2A4. Now you can get these for around £60 to $100 online, and these masks are very good. I'm very impressed with mine. So here's my Forsida F2. So what I want to get into in this video is actual reasons you might want to own a mask like this, or even something a bit more primitive and cheap, and what these masks can actually do to protect you. So basically the main reason I'm going to get onto is industrial disasters. If you're familiar with the news, you'll know that pretty much every year you'll have a minor to a big industrial disaster. They always happen. There's lots of reasons for it. Sort of not very good safety regulations, poor training for workers, corporate greed is probably one of the biggest ones, where safety things aren't followed because it would cost the company too much money. So not every one of those disasters a gas mask can protect you from, but a great many they could. Now, probably the worst example of an industrial disaster where a gas mask could have protected people was the Bhopal gas leak, I assume that's pronounced correctly, in India, where several thousand people died because a pesticide factory had a leak. The workers didn't know how to contain it in the factory. Most of the containment systems all failed because they were never tested and refurbished, and it led to many people dying and even more people having birth defects and other sort of illnesses afterwards. So an airborne pesticide a gas mask could definitely protect you from. And it's not just sort of things like that with industrial disasters. If you live near train tracks, that's a bad example. Well, good example on my part, but you know, not a bad thing. Bad thing to happen to you, if that makes sense, is there's been a few in America where trains carrying harsh chemicals have derailed. If you live nearby, they seep out, they get into the air, they can cause severe damage to your respiratory system if you inhale them. Again, a gas mask can protect you from that. Now, one thing I want to mention before I go any further, because a lot of people mistake this, and I want to try and make this as clear as possible, is that a gas mask can't provide you with oxygen. All a gas mask does is filter the air coming in to remove harmful substances, so you're inhaling clean air. If there's too many contaminants in the air, a gas mask won't work. And for the same reason, if you're in an environment where there happens to not be very much oxygen, a gas mask can't provide you with oxygen. Your best option in that case would be have some sort of self-contained breathing apparatus with a sort of oxygen tank similar to what a firefighter would use. However, I think that's getting too impractical for most people, so what we're going to look at is where you could use a gas mask. And in many of those sort of same incidents, even if you couldn't use a self-contained breathing apparatus to sort of escape, at least a gas mask would be much better than you inhaling this stuff. Even if you're not getting enough oxygen, your survival odds go up with a gas mask if you're trying to evacuate. Now, to add to that, what I was saying, a gas mask should always be used to evacuate. You shouldn't ever sit in a cloud of poison gas with a mask on. That's sort of a misconception a lot of people have. Masks are designed to evacuate from somewhere. So if there's a disaster, you get the mask on, you get your filter on, you get out of there as fast as possible. The mask's there to protect you while you escape, not while you wait for somebody to come and get you. And that's sort of one of the things that I think I want to cover in this video, is as much as I have a lot of respect for emergency service workers, quite often they're underfunded and they won't get you in time, or, you know, by the time everybody knows how bad the disaster is you're in, it might be too late. So that's one of the reasons I think you should really own a mask. So, we've covered industrial disasters. As said, it could either be a factory that leaks near you, it could be train derails, maybe you could have a fire somewhere, so you have a chemical fire that releases very harmful smoke into the atmosphere. If you inhale it, you're in a lot of trouble. So what you have with gas masks is you have filters. Now the filter is the most important part of the mask. Basically a filter simply screws onto the side or bottom of the mask depending on the model you have. And I'll get onto industrial masks later that have slightly different filters. And what that filter does is that purifies the air as it comes through, so you should only be breathing healthy air, or the rest of the stuff gets stuck. So you have two kinds of filters. This is a particulate filter, also known as a HEPA filter, and this is where you basically have paper, cotton, maybe fiberglass, other materials that form a filter barrier. And what that does is big particles that come in with the air, they get stuck on the filter, they can't get through. Eventually your filter will clog and then you will be in trouble, but if you've got spare filters you can swap them, or hopefully you've got out of there by that period. So the filter doesn't constantly keep cleaning the air. What the filter does is it blocks harmful things from getting through. Now there are two types of filters, well there's more than two types, but for the sake of this video I'll just cover these types of filters. So you have the simple particulate filters like this, and then you have a full-on NBC filter. That stands for nuclear, biological, chemical. These are also called CBRN filters. Chemical, biological, radiological, nuclear. Essentially it's just the same wording for the same thing. Now in the front section of this filter you have your particulate filter, same as this thing here. In the back section you have activated charcoal. Now activated charcoal or carbon is very useful because nasty things stick to it. So stuff that gets through the first layer of the filter gets stuck on the carbon there. If you can, always go for an NBC type filter or an industrial ABEK filter, because these filters will both block the stuff this will block and trap the other stuff that this filter wouldn't. However, this filter does have its uses, so we'll get onto that now. So a filter like this, what is it good for? Well, a filter like this is very good at blocking stuff like tear gas, where the particles are big, and stuff like smoke. So if you're in a burning building, you kind of have two options. You can have a particulate filter like this, and while this won't remove carbon monoxide or provide you with oxygen, if you're fleeing you're at least inhaling less smoke. The smoke will eventually clog this up and it will be useless, but for the time being you can get through the smoke. Now, a filter like this won't actually do anything extra. Maybe activated charcoal will stop some more chemicals getting through with the smoke, but this will work fine for that. The other option is tear gas or CS gas. Now if you have tear gas, despite its name it's not actually a gas, it's a powder. They can either turn it into a gas form by attaching it to other nasty chemicals, or it can be burned to create smoke with CS agent on it. Now CS agent actually has very large particles. Those particles will get stuck on a particulate filter, so you only need a little filter like this to be able to breathe. So what you should obviously do with a gas mask, well, I can get this on. Just bear with me 1 second. Is once you have your mask you've decided on, you want to make sure that that mask fits you properly, so you know it's safe to use, and you want to train taking it on and putting it off quite a few times so you can get down to doing it quickly. There's a thing you can do with a gas mask called a fit test. Once you've got the gas mask tightened, you can put your hand over the intake. The mask pressurises your face. When it has the negative pressure seal, you know the gas mask is airtight, therefore it's all down to the filter now to stop the nasty chemicals. You also might want to do what I'm failing to do here and get a lot of practice taking filters on and off of gas masks, so when an event happens they're actually not stuck and you can get the filter on without issue. There we go. So, as said, these little particulate filters protect you from CS agents, but you probably want to mostly stockpile filters like this simply because they protect you from everything, so it's better to have a heavier filter that does everything than have a little particulate filter that might not stop all the chemicals. Now, there's another kind of practical use for a gas mask, and that use is against terrorism. Now, there is obviously a potential that terrorists could use chemical weapons or manufacture their own, a dirty bomb or something like that. Now, with radiation, how radiation works is you get alpha, beta and gamma. Now, with alpha and beta radiation, a gas mask can stop them. It can't do anything against gamma. If you have very harmful alpha radiation that sticks to things like dust or irradiates dust, a filter like this will block that. So that will prevent you from inhaling irradiated dust and damaging yourself. So a mask like this can also have a function at protecting you from terrorist attacks. And the same thing if a terrorist made a simple dirty bomb or something, you know, a chemical bomb that had chlorine gas or something like that in, a big filter like this would protect you from that, no problem. Again, there's certain chemical weapons that are so nasty that I don't think a mask would do very much to protect you, because you need all the training and the NBC suit and everything else on before it hits, which for most people isn't going to be practical. So I'm not really going to cover that. Now, there's something else you can do with a gas mask that's interesting in the event of a fire, which I just want to show you here before we wrap this video up. Now, the other thing I wanted to cover is, obviously, in the event of a fire, heat and smoke rises. So what you can do is attach a couple of hoses to a mask, and then you can inhale through the hose as you drag it along the floor, and that's obviously a lot safer than not having anything at all. It's just an option, because the airflow is better at the floor. If you're wondering why the mask is making this weird noise, it's because there's not a filter on it, so it's bringing in too much air when I talk and breathe without having a filter to slow the airflow coming through. Now, in terms of pricing options, you can get some very cheap surplus masks that would require new filters, but the masks themselves would work fine. If you want something very basic, you can get a Russian GP5 mask. They mass-produced those in the Soviet Union times as a civil defence mask. Very cheap to buy. You just need a new filter on it, not the original filters. One of the best options I think you have is to get a modern industrial mask. 3M do disposable half masks which cover you from all the chemicals. For an industrial mask, you want to look for one that says ABEK on it. That's ABEK. And ABEK plus particulate means that they cover pretty much all industrial gases and block particles. So you can buy disposable ones that come in a little sealed bag. They're only half masks, you might want goggles to go with it, but you can rip them open, just put them on, and you can keep them stored in that bag until the time comes where you need to use it. Obviously you need to be able to know how to put it on, but that's obviously an option. The good thing with industrial masks as well is, although some of them have filters that are specific for that type of mask, the good thing is with a obviously industrial mask is the filters are mass produced for that brand of mask, and there's a lot of them around, and it's not really any questions asked why you're getting an industrial mask, because they're very common for workplace use. So you could get a mask you like, find filters that are sold for fairly cheap, and then obviously put a lot of them, stockpile them, and you're good to go. Right, I hope this video has been useful, and thanks for watching.